Coming to you live this morning from Sharon and David Moore's front porch in Munns Park. That's the background, and it's beautiful here. It's cool. It's fun to be visiting. So I hope you will be patient if we get any odd glitches or you hear a dog barking in the background. That's a possibility, but that's how you know it's real. So again, hi everybody. I'm Roz Cook, and I'll be leading our service today. Thank you for joining in. I personally have found these Zoom services to have a certain charm all their own. They're not the same as being with you in person, but I feel like they really work and that our congregation is doing its best to find ways for people to get together and connect. And I'm very humbled because I feel like we're doing a really good job with what we have to work with. So I'm really glad we're all together this morning. So welcome to October. Our theme has changed along with the calendar page and hopefully the weather. And our focus this month is on emotional intelligence. David Moore's talk today is going to deal with that in sort of an indirect way. He's going to be sharing the emotional dissidence of the way the term liberal has come to be used and how far it's come from its true meaning. And the intelligence part of that will be all about putting the word back into its proper context, with the hope that it will stop being used incorrectly, and all the research he's put in to making this a wonderful talk. So with that said, here are my opening words today. It is not only by the questions we have answered that progress may be measured, but also by those we are still asking. The passionate controversies of one era are viewed as sterile preoccupations by another, for knowledge alters what we seek as well as what we find. And the author of that is Frida Adler. So now we will be starting service with the lighting of the chalice because I'm not aware of any announcements. And he happens to be right here with me. Take it away, Tom.
Hi, everybody.
I'm Tom.
I'm Tom.
Waiting on my phone.
Waiting on my phone. Hang on. A liberal is someone who looks ahead and not behind. Someone who welcomes new ideas without rigid actions. Someone who cares about the welfare of the people, their health, their housing, their schools, their jobs, their civil rights, and their civil liberties. Someone who believes we can break through the stalemate and suspicions that grip us in our policies. If that is what they mean by a liberal, then I am proud to say that I am a liberal. And that was by JFK.
Thank you, Tom. And now I ask you all to join me for a unison reading of our covenant. Our church, as you know, doesn't teach dogma or cling to specific ideas about God or gods, but we do make promises to ourselves and each other when we come together on Sundays. Our covenant will appear on the screen in a moment. You will all be muted, but I encourage you to please read along. Love is the doctrine of our congregation. The quest for truth is our holy right, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in friendship, thus do we covenant. Thank you. And at this time in our service, we have some beautiful music to go along with the offertory. And I like to remind everybody that if we were in church, we would take up this offering together just to be sort of a visual reminder that our church needs us, but our church also needs our funds, because even though we aren't in our beautiful building right now, there are still bills to pay and maintenance to be done, and always, our rather large mortgage is due at the beginning of every month. And that will help ensure that when we get back, that our church building will be waiting for us. And I also want to shout out, there are still many people working very hard to take care of that church space, even though we're not in it. So there is human labor happening, there are cleaning supplies needing, we still need the internet and the air conditioning, so there are definitely bills to pay. So while we listen to the beautiful music that's coming, I ask you to please consider what the easiest way is for you to make your pledge. You might go look for your checkbook right now. A lot of you have actually figured out that PayPal isn't such a scary thing, and the link will probably go up in the chat room. So by whatever means you'd like to think about helping to support the church, I encourage you to do that now. Thank you. Oh, that was just beautiful. Thank you, Joe and Rocky. It was a lovely duet. All right, well now I would like to welcome back David Moore. David has been a member of this church for a very long time, and I know that he and Sharon also, when they're up north in the summer, attend the Beacon UU Church in Flagstaff, which is great. David recently has edited the newsletter for a very long time and finally got a little break from that. And now that he has spare time, he's done some amazing things, like he just went on this Grand Canyon hiking adventure. And his talks are always a wonderful mix of logic and reason and humor. So thank you, David. I turn the stage over to you.
Okay, thank you, Roz. And here we go. Socialist, anarchist, elitist, traitor. George Soros pays you to protest. You hate America. As a committed liberal, I'm concerned about misrepresentations of what I believe, what I support, and how I act. My liberalism differs from what many on the illiberal side say it is. This morning, I'll try to set the record straight. Unitarian Universalism's basic principles match my political principles. These core values are familiar to us. They include justice, compassion, liberty and democratic processes, free and responsible searches for truth, respect for one another, our world, our community, and our environment. Taken as a whole, these principles point to a government acting as a caretaker for the general public, as a humane mechanism for promoting everyone's well-being. They require a government of, by, and for all the people. Contrary to distortions, here is how I see these liberal principles playing out in key political issues today. First, I don't want healthcare for nothing. I want to see my tax dollars at work supporting a healthcare system everyone can afford. Based on abilities to pay, some people ought to spring for more, some less, some nothing at all. Lots of public-private options can make this happen. It's disgraceful that the US remains the only major country with no universal health care. Focusing on the short-term costs of making it available and ignoring the long-term costs of refusing it is foolish. As Bernie put it, look, if you have somebody who doesn't have health insurance, who doesn't have a doctor or dentist, and in order to deal with their cold or flu or dental problem, they go to an emergency room, in general, that will cost 10 times more than walking into a community health center. But healthcare is more than an economic commodity with costs and benefits. It is a moral imperative. Universal access to healthcare is morally right because it is all about equal opportunity and liberty. It gives everyone a chance to be well and to advance one's education, occupation, and personal happiness. Healthcare ought to be an essential tax-supported governmental service, just like streetlights and libraries, fire departments and air traffic controllers, and educational and judicial systems. Along this line, I don't think deep state liberals have been exaggerating COVID-19 to bring down the current administration. Nor do I think advocating mask wearing infringes on personal liberties or is governmental overreach. COVID-19 spread is tragic, so people ought to keep wearing masks in public. The public health profession has increased the years in our lives and the life in our years. It gets credit for infectious disease vaccinations, municipal sanitation, and improved nutrition, smoke-free living, and sober driving, to name a few things. So when COVID-19 started and public health specialists realized the shortage of medical grade masks, they recommended the public not wear them so healthcare professionals could. These specialists later learned that asymptomatic people could spread COVID-19 unknowingly. They also learned that when looking at data for groups rather than specific individuals, cloth masks helped block the spread. So they changed course and recommended wearing masks, cloth ones in particular. This reversal was not incompetence or conspiracy. It was how public health science works. So yes, COVID-19 fatigue is setting in, but let's have no slumping at the oars. Look at what's happening to the president and to so many others as I speak. Let's honor responsible searches for truth, and let's show compassion and respect for others by continuing to wear the darn masks. Next, I don't want to release all prisoners. I do want to stop inequitable mass incarceration of people of color and ensure that punishments fit the crimes. I don't hate the police, and I don't want to disband police departments. I do want to root out racism and brutality by providing more training and holding offenders of blue accountable, just like in other professions. I want to stop state-sponsored violence inflicted on racial minorities. So as far as I'm concerned, reallocating police resources is a better term than defunding, because I don't want to defund public safety. For instance, the police ought not act as frontline social workers. People's mental health breakdowns ought to be considered medical emergencies rather than crimes. Let's have mental health specialists calm those in crisis and direct them to behavioral health centers rather than jails. Reallocating police resources involves purposeful leadership that moves police departments from cultures of coercion and compulsion to response and guidance, especially for racially marginalized, mentally ill, homeless, and substance abusing individuals. It means seeing these people not as likely criminals, but as individuals with worth and dignity. Fourth, I don't think global warming is liberal hot air. Earth's climate is heating up and is doing so at an unprecedented and alarming pace. Evidence from ice cores, ocean sediments, and coral reefs shows Earth is warming roughly 10 times faster than its average rate following an ice age. And today's global warming is not a natural cycle. Earth's climate is heating up due to human influence. The scientific chains of evidence linking global warming to the fossil fuel heat-trapping gases humanity has pumped into the atmosphere are irrefutable. We're not going to be able to call hailstorms, mudslides, lightning strikes, and so on acts of God or natural disasters much longer. We have met the enemy, and it is us. One more thing. I don't think liberal scientists or politicians are manipulating climate data or suppressing dissent to protect their research funding, undermine US oil, gas, and oil companies, redistribute wealth, or establish global governance. Climate change is real and is becoming apocalyptic. All the heat energy being trapped in the atmosphere means we're on track for even more heat waves, droughts, and wildfires, cold waves, blizzards, and ice storms, and sea level rise, hurricanes, and floods. Global weirding and climate chaos are good names for all these events. Their associated health and safety risks, mass migrations of people, and economic, social, and political upheavals are threatening us right now. So let's have the US return to the Paris Agreement and heed the report by the 2018 Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Let's lead the world by demanding we go further, faster. Let's approach climate change as a responsible search for truth, as respect for our world community and our interdependent web, and as a matter of life and death. Up next, immigration. To begin, no, I don't want open borders. I want border security that lawfully regulates entry into the US, a system that excludes people with lawless records and admits those from all social and economic strata who will help our country thrive. Border security does not require a dumb 2,000-mile wall. It requires smart surveillance systems, ports of entry, and border personnel. For sure, I don't want illegal aliens invading and infesting America. But more to the point, I don't want this language in our political discourse. The term alien has gained too many outlandish science fiction connotations to be appropriate these days. And shortening illegal aliens to illegals says these people are not essentially legitimate, that their existence is criminal. But how can any member of the human race not be a legal human member? The terms illegal aliens and illegals are dehumanizing, demonizing, and divisive. They are used to strip people of personhood. Better terms are unauthorized immigrants and non-citizens. What's more, saying these people are invading or infesting the US are two more examples of inflammatory rhetoric used in too many immigration messages. So here I imagine some would say I'm being just politically correct, but I say I'm being respectful and using an appropriate political tone. And a few more things. I don't want unauthorized immigrants taking jobs from US citizens, freeloading off of our welfare system, or menacing our safety. Fortunately, these threats are minimal. Unauthorized immigrants mostly fill jobs that US citizens do not take in the food industries, caregiving, landscaping, hospitality, and so on. They add younger workers to our aging labor force and are significant consumers and taxpayers too. While unauthorized immigrants can go to hospital emergency rooms and attend Head Start and public schools, they cannot receive federal benefits like food stamps, Medicaid, or supplemental security income, SSI. They're not draining our economy, they're contributing to it. And immigrants are less likely to commit serious crimes or be behind bars than native-born citizens. Immigrants generally move to this country to improve their and their families' lives, not to get into trouble. Further, I don't want amnesty for unauthorized immigrants. I want these people to make amends for entering the US unlawfully and show good faith moving forward. This can be done through registering, undergoing background checks, fine, and demonstrating competence with US civic English. Of course, asking unauthorized immigrants to do these things calls for the US to first show its good faith by reducing uncertainty and fear of deportation. Finally, I don't want to enfranchise unauthorized immigrants in order to boost membership in the Democratic Party. I do want unauthorized immigrants to be able to come out of the shadows and become full-fledged contributors. The US can't and shouldn't deport 11 million people. Instead, we ought to allow unauthorized immigrants who entered as adults to qualify as legal, permanent, non-citizen residents. And we ought to provide unauthorized immigrants who were brought in as children a path to full citizenship. We ought to keep families together in the US and allow them to visit their homelands. We ought to simplify employer-employee relationships. And looking at the bigger picture, we ought to develop a humane yet workable approach for guest workers and asylum seekers. All these immigration actions come back to core values of human worth and dignity, compassion, and justice. Sixth, I'm not for abortion, but I am for reproductive rights with abortion as an option. A woman's decision about what's best for her and her family ought to prevail over the forced gestation and birthing of an unplanned, undesired embryo. I'm talking individual liberty and freedom of conscience here. Next, I don't want to control guns in order to disarm and eventually rule the populace. I want to control guns to maintain public safety. It seems to me that the effective public health campaigns against smoking and drunk driving ought to inform a similar campaign against gun violence. I don't want corporations and businesses to be unprofitable, but corporate welfare for the rich and brutal capitalism for the poor is just not right. The Walmarts, Chevrons, and Tyson Foods of the world ought to pay their fair share of taxes, pay their employees a livable wage, and upgrade working conditions. They need to lose their subsidies, stop polluting, and stay out of elections and regulatory decisions. And in terms of bailouts for banks, airlines, and the politically connected, let's be wary of a system that privatizes profits but socializes losses. Finally, I am not anti-Christian. I just don't think Christians should be privileged while engaged in public governance. Indeed, no religious people should be able to use their beliefs about their particular God's will to shape public policies on contraception, abortion, sexual identity, same-sex marriage, or any other matter. So, as I said in my opening, I am concerned about the ways my liberalism is being misrepresented. I'm also concerned about how it is misinterpreted. To me, kneeling during the national anthem, removing monuments to white supremacists, and protesting peacefully in the streets do not dishonor America. These dissents are meant to encourage people to live up to America's ideals. They are part of the democratic process. Fact-checking and investigative reporting do not constitute fake news or an enemy of the people. A watchdog press, acting as the loyal opposition, counters governmental propaganda and contributes to a healthy democracy. Now, on a personal note, I'm finding it harder and harder to even hint at these principles and beliefs to long-term neighbors up here, to my college roommate friend of some 50 years, and surprisingly, to my younger brother. Doing so tends to trigger a rant about liberals' ignorance, idiocy, or moral inferiority. Especially after watching last Tuesday's slugfest of a presidential debate, I am more concerned than ever about our toxic political environment, where hyper-partisans accuse one another of outrageous positions. So with this in mind, my closing words come from Barack Obama, who years ago declared, "I firmly believe that whenever we exaggerate or demonize or oversimplify or overstate our case, we lose. Whenever we dumb down the political debate, we lose. Our goal should be to stick to our guns on those core values that make this country great, show a spirit of flexibility and sustained attention that can achieve those goals, and try to create the sort of serious adult consensus around problems that can admit Democrats, Republicans, and independents of goodwill." I'm thinking that those core values that make this country great and our liberal UU principles have a lot in common. So one thing we need now is to tone down the hyperbole and vitriol and work toward forming a more perfect union. Thank you.
Ah, David, that was so spot on. So words I needed to hear. I feel like what you're telling us is we just need to start talking to other people and not assuming we know what they're thinking. We just need to ask questions. Well, what do you mean by that? Why do you support that particular view, instead of just automatically demonizing someone and assuming we know what they're thinking? So if this leads to greater debate, I think that is exactly what we need. So thank you for offering that up. All right, we are now going to do a somewhat unison reading of our West Valley UU mission statement. The words will come up on the screen, but unfortunately, mine will be the only voice you hear. No. Okay. We agree to provide a safe place to celebrate diversity, draw inspiration for living better lives, foster social and environmental justice, and compassionately support each other in our spiritual searches. And Tom is miraculously extinguishing the chalice, so that will be done. And these are my closing words. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. I will say one more thing right before the postlude. We will still have joys and concerns afterwards. I know everyone enjoys that time and that time to socialize. There will be a little pause while Paul has to work behind the scene to get everyone unmuted. So please just be a little patient with that. I know you will be. Thank you.